This Week in Murder. In the cocaine-fueled underbelly of 1981 Los Angeles, a story so bizarre it sounds like a classic Hollywood script. Adult film stardom, ruthless nightclub moguls, and violent street gangs collide in a spectacular explosion of greed and depravity, and a home invasion that led to one of the most brutal unsolved mass slaughters in California history. This is the story of John Holmes and the Wonderland Gang on This Week in Murder. John Curtis Holmes was born August 8, 1944 in Asheville, Ohio. The youngest of four, he took on his stepfather's last name, who was the father of the three other children, whom later John claimed was such a severe alcoholic there were times he vomited on the children. His parents married and divorced 3 times between 1936 and 1947. At 15, John enlisted in the U.S. Army and was honorably discharged 3 years later after serving in West Germany in the Signal Corps. He then moved to Los Angeles and worked as a forklift operator at a meatpacking warehouse. The exposure to the freezing temperatures caused severe health problems, leading to a collapsed lung. It was around 1969 when Holmes was introduced to the porn industry. He claims it was when he was unemployed recovering from his collapsed lung that he was using a restroom and a man in the urinal next to him noticed Holmes was well endowed and offered him a new career opportunity. He began nude modeling for underground adult magazines and a few stag films. In 1971, he began using the moniker Johnny Wad, just as the porn industry we know today was in its infancy. But while his professional career was taking off, his personal life was taking a downturn. Holmes was using so much cocaine that it started to affect his ability to perform in films. To continue funding his drug habit, he began selling drugs, pimping women, and in one instance an underage girl. He also prostituted himself to women and men. During his ventures, he came across low-level dealers and guys at the very top of the food chain, one of them being Eddie Nash, a drug dealer who owned several clubs with ties to the Israeli mafia. He befriended Nash and the two often partied together. At the same time, he was also acquainted with a group called the Wonderland Gang, a group of people who distributed heroin and cocaine out of a row house in Laurel Canyon. They would also rob other dealers as an added source of income. Holmes frequented the row house and purchased drugs from the group, comprised of Ron Lanius, Billy DeVarell, Tracy McCourt, and Joy Miller. They weren't necessarily on the low end of the spectrum when it comes to drug dealing, as they were one of the most feared and largest distributors of cocaine in LA at the time, but they were unorganized and drug addicted themselves. Joy specifically was strung out on cocaine, so much so that her drug usage didn't slow down despite being arrested 7 times, having breast cancer, and receiving a double mastectomy. She was Billy DeVarell's girlfriend and the house was in her name. Ron Lanius and his wife Susan slept on the live-in sofa. Lanius' friend from prison, David Lynn, a heroin addict and member of the Aryan Brotherhood, helped him start the drug distribution business, accomplishing the goal they had set out since befriending each other in prison. When Holmes entered the picture with his own level of depravity, this led to the retelling of this story through some classic Hollywood films. Holmes and the gang came up with a plan to rob Eddie Nash. Eddie Nash was born Adel Garib Nasrallah in Palestine, April 3, 1929. He came to the U.S. in the 1950s and worked as an actor and stuntman, briefly appearing as a character named Nash on the Western series The Cisco Kid.
Here's my boy. Nash, meet Mr. Butler. How do you do?
Come on, Cisco! Come on, Cisco!
He opened up a hot dog stand in the 60s on Hollywood Boulevard, and by the 70s he owned several nightclubs and restaurants. He also sold and distributed drugs to patrons at his establishments. He became a crime boss with links to the Italian and American mafia. Much like the members of the Wonderland Gang, Nash also became a heavy cocaine user, often locking himself in his mansion and hosting lavish parties. Holmes would attend one of these events and made sure he left a sliding door unlocked before he left. He even came back one more time and bought drugs from Nash, just to make sure the sliding door was still unlocked. It is unclear if Holmes was forced into it because he owed Wonderland money, or if he was a willing participant. But on June 29, 1981, the Wonderland crew rushed in through the sliding door of Eddie Nash's home, holding Nash and his bodyguard at gunpoint and stealing valuable jewelry, cash, and drugs. 2 days later, on July 1st, it is alleged that Nash was suspicious of John Holmes and either forced him to watch or even partake in the killing of the Wonderland Gang. Ron Lanius, Billy DeVarell, Joy Miller, and Barbara Richardson, who was David Lynn's girlfriend just visiting at the time, were all bludgeoned to death. Officials said it was one of the most brutal crimes they'd ever seen. While David Lynn was using drugs with a prostitute in a motel, his girlfriend was being beaten to death. The getaway driver, Tracy McCourt, luckily stayed home that day. The bloody scene at 8763 Wonderland Avenue immediately sparked one of the most sensational investigations in Los Angeles' history. Left behind on the headboard of Ron Launius' bed was a crucial piece of evidence, a bloody palm print belonging to John Holmes. In March 1982, Holmes was arrested and charged with 4 counts of capital murder. The prosecution argued he was a vengeful accomplice who helped orchestrate the slaughter after being shortchanged from the Nash robbery. However, Holmes' defense successfully painted him as a secondary victim, a desperate addict forced at gunpoint by Nash's thugs to facilitate entry into the house. After a highly publicized 3-week trial, a jury acquitted Holmes of all charges. He took the real secrets of that night to his grave, dying of AIDS complications in March 1988. It wasn't until a month after his death that his first wife, Sharon, revealed that Johnny Wad had come home that morning covered in blood, confessing he had stood by and watched the executions take place. The law eventually caught up to Eddie Nash, but never for the murders themselves. In 1990 and 91, Nash and his towering henchman, Gregory Dials, went to trial for the bludgeonings. The first ended in a hung jury, the second in a full acquittal. It took nearly 2 decades for the truth behind those trials to surface. In 2000, a federal RICO investigation revealed that Nash had bribed the lone holdout juror in his first trial with $50,000. In 2001, an ailing Nash accepted a plea bargain, admitting to jury tampering and drug trafficking. He served less than 4 years in prison and died in 2014. What began as a chaotic collision of a desperate porn star, a ruthless nightclub mogul, and a volatile street gang ended as one of Hollywood's most enduring true crime mysteries. It was a dark, cocaine-fueled tragedy mixed with greed and chaos, leaving behind 4 bodies on the floor, a shattered survivor, and a story grim enough to cement itself in the underbelly of American folklore forever. Hit like and subscribe to stay updated on this story and more cases on the next This Week in Murder.